The 1960s witnessed a slow but discernible thawing of the iron chains that had long bound the Soviet Union, and with this political shift came a similar softening in the realm of photography. No longer were the lenses of cameras enslaved to the cold, calculated imagery of official propaganda. Instead, they began to capture the vibrant, candid dance of everyday life. Vladimir Lagrange, whose passion for the art of photography was kindled in his youth, turned his camera towards the world around him, capturing the intimate faces of friends, family, and even the anonymous souls of the streets. In 1959, a mere 20 years of age, he embarked upon his career as a photojournalist for TASS, the foremost news agency of the nation. Through his lens, Lagrange chronicled an entire era of Soviet existence, infusing his images with a lyrical quality that sought to preserve the unadorned truth of daily life, rather than the artifice of staged compositions. His mission was clear: to paint a portrait of metallurgists, pilots, miners, doctors, and farmers that was as authentic as it was profound. "My goal was to introduce readers to their work and lives authentically," he once wrote, with a sincerity that echoed through his every photograph. The death of Joseph Stalin in 1953 heralded the rise of a new figure within the Communist Party, Nikita Khrushchev. His ascent to power marked a pivotal moment, ushering in what would come to be known as the Khrushchev Thaw, a period characterized by a cautious yet significant retreat from the oppressive shadow of Stalin's regime. In a speech delivered in 1956, Khrushchev did the unthinkable. He denounced Stalin's cult of personality and the brutal repressions that had been the hallmarks of his rule. This bold act set in motion a series of reforms that cautiously nudged the Soviet Union towards a more liberalized society. The thaw saw the gradual loosening of the iron grip of censorship, allowing artists, writers, and filmmakers, once confined by the rigid constraints of ideology, to explore themes that had once been forbidden. Works critical of Stalin or depicting the Soviet life with a more nuanced brush began to emerge, creating a space where the once unimaginable could now not only be conceived, also celebrated. The release of millions of political prisoners from labor camps was a tangible sign the relentless state terror was beginning to recede. Khrushchev also sought to improve the living standards of ordinary citizens, with housing projects blossoming across the nation and efforts made to increase the availability of consumer goods. These initiatives, while not revolutionary, were a deliberate attempt to steer the Soviet Union away from the bleak austerity of the Stalinist era. Yet the path of reform was fraught with resistance. Entrenched hardliners within the party and government resisted these changes at every turn, creating a tension that crackled through the period. By the early 1960s, the momentum of reform began to wane, and this tension reached its zenith with Khrushchev's removal from power in 1964. The economic reforms introduced by Alexei Kosygin in 1965 were effectively abandoned by the decade's end, while the public trial of writers Yuli Daniel and Andrei Sinyavsky in 1966, first of its kind since Stalin's reign, and the invasion of Czechoslovakia in 1968 signaled the reversal of Soviet liberalization. Historians often draw parallels between Khrushchev's thaw and Mikhail Gorbachev's perestroika and glasnost of the 1980s. Although they led the Soviet Union in different eras, both Khrushchev and Gorbachev initiated dramatic reforms, each of which enjoyed popular support but faced fierce opposition from hardliners. Both leaders were ultimately dismissed, though the outcomes for their country were vastly different. Mikhail Gorbachev himself acknowledged Khrushchev's achievements, describing them as remarkable. He praised the 1956 speech, yet noted that Khrushchev ultimately failed in his reformist endeavors.